Tellico Village Broadcasting remembers our founder, Harold Ek.
Hello, I'm Ray Wright. As a former volunteer at Tellico Village Broadcasting, I am honored to participate in this memorial for Harold Ek. When I started volunteering at Tellico Village Broadcasting, it was very obvious who the authoritative expert was on site. It was Harold. Harold could do anything and everything. He became my mentor, as he did many others. He was a patient, thoughtful teacher. He was a meticulous editor, making sure all of the tics and verbal miscues would not cause an embarrassment for any of our friends that we recorded. He was always energetic and always available for any last-minute production needs. He never complained about our poor planning. To many of us, he will always be the most important member of Tellico Village Broadcasting. He would always bring a smile to our face when he planned his entrance each Tuesday morning at exactly 9 o'clock when the chimes rang at the local church. It was almost like he was being announced. He enjoyed that, and we did too. Tellico Village has lost the consummate volunteer. We recently learned from his son that he spent more time working at Tellico Village Broadcasting than he did any other job. Harold participated in many events and many activities throughout the village, and he made many friends. He was so many things to so many people. But to me, most of all, he was my friend, and I will miss him.
I remember Harold Ek when I first came to Channel 3. That's what it was called back in the day. Harold Ek was the friendly curmudgeon of the entire station. And there's no doubt that when Harold said something needed to be done, he knew exactly how to do it. He was in charge of all the technical operations here at Channel 3 at the time. And all of us who surrounded him knew that he was the head poobah. He knew everything about what we were recording. He knew all the cameras and equipment, and we leaned on his every word if we wanted to be here at the station. To Harold's family, I want you to know how special he was for us here at Channel 3 and later on in Tellico Village Broadcasting's career. I did an interview with him on the 25th anniversary of Tellico Village Broadcasting. How does that make you feel after doing this for 25 years?
Old. That's how it makes me feel.
It makes you feel old. I can still remember parts of it. I can still remember Harold saying, "Well, you quit 3 times and then you came back." You know, and we all had a laugh over that, and it was true. But what a great man. He had experience. He traveled the world with his wife, Joan, who he loved dearly. I'm going to miss you, Harold. Goodbye, dear friend.
Hi, I'm Bill Whitehouse, and Harold Ek and I crossed on 2 different worlds. We were both bridge players, and we were both volunteers at Tellico Village Broadcasting. And Harold was a mentor to me in both of those worlds. He was a fabulous bridge player. I came to the village about 5.5 years ago and dove right into both of these activities, bridge and Tellico Village Broadcasting. And I can't remember the number of times that I'd be working at the computer, editing a video program. I'd run into some sort of a technical problem. I'd be all alone, and I'd call Harold. And almost every time that happened, he would drop whatever he was doing and come to the studio. And he'd sit there and he'd mutter and grumble and fuss at the computer, but he'd fix it, always. He'd get it fixed and he'd make it work for me. And in the same way with bridge, I would often come to him and say, here in the studio, and say, "Harold, you know, what am I supposed to do when I've got 4 hearts and 11 points and my partner opens 1 spade?" And he would always know the answer to that as well. He was a technician, and he was a smart guy. And one of the things I remember about Harold was he had this fabulous posture. He was tall and slender. He was always straight as an arrow, ramrod straight. So I am lucky to have known Harold. I'm lucky to have had him as a mentor, and I certainly am going to miss him.
Hi, my name's Tom Valenzo. I've been with Channel 3 or Tellico Village Broadcasting for 13 years. When I got here, Harold Ek was basically in charge. The thing I like about Harold is we had nothing that went on here without Harold's approval first. He would let us research things and say, nope, that's not going to work. We'd research it again, he'd say, yep, that's much better, let's do that. I always liked the fact that he kept Tellico Village in mind as being his #1 priority. And I think the village accepted us doing that. I think the one thing I thought funny about Harold is he couldn't type worth a darn. I got tired of watching him go like this. Harold, can I type that for you? He said, sure, please, I need a secretary. And so that was my contribution. I was Harold's secretary.
Hi, I'm Doris Ryan. I've lived in Tellico Village since February of 1993, so that's 27 years. I want to tell you about my relationship with Harold Ek. I met him shortly after we had moved here, maybe several months. And he called up one day to our house and said, could I borrow your duplicate bridge boards? He was going to host a party of duplicate bridge at his home, and he didn't have the boards, so sure, you can borrow our duplicate bridge boards. It wasn't too long after that that Harold invited my husband and I to join their duplicate bridge club. Now, they were a bunch of Michiganders, and then there was Bill and I that were in this club, but that's how our friendship started. It was such a neat thing to visit with Harold and Joan in their home and to learn from them all of their travels around the world and to see some of the beautiful things that they had picked up in their travels. Most of us really know Harold in Tellico Village from all of his work that he did with Channel 3. He was, I guess, one of the founders and, worked tirelessly for Channel 3. But he also devoted a lot of his time to helping with the Tellico community players, and I've been a member of that group since I moved here. Harold used to tape a lot of our plays, and he really helped a lot of our new actors learn something about how they looked to other people when they looked at the tapes of the shows that he had made. So he has done a lot of community service to many organizations in the village in the time that he's been here. I think back on the friendship that I've had with Harold, not only the Duplicate Bridge Club, but also through the players. And then over the last several years, we had been members of a weekly dinner club. So, that was a special way to get to know him. But I just want to tell you how I've remembered Harold. I always thought of him as the guy with the long legs and the short name. He's a special person, and he was always such a friend. It didn't matter what you needed, Harold was always there. If you asked him to go with you 1 mile, he always would go at least 2 miles. So I'm going to miss him. Tellico Village is going to miss him. So thank you, Harold Ek, for being such a friend.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Henry Cullen, and I'm a Ford retiree, having retired out of Atlanta, Georgia. I knew Harold Ek throughout his Ford career. Harold was a very highly respected engineer in Ford engineering. Always a gentleman, always a credit to the Ford retirees. I will miss Harold.
I met Harold 13 years ago when I started working at TVB. It was actually called Channel 3 then. And when I started, I had absolutely no experience with television. I mean, I'd messed around with cameras like everybody, but I didn't know anything about a television camera, studio lighting, audio, video, nothing. And I've never been accused of being tech savvy. But Harold seemed to like the challenge, and he was the one who was doing the training. He was the most knowledgeable person at the station, and he really was the guy that called the shots. But he trained me on all those things, just like he trained everybody and all the volunteers that came before me. And Harold wasn't just a good teacher. He was a really interesting guy. One of the things I learned that had nothing to do with the TV station was that he had been a sailor. And I learned that one night we were doing a shoot at the yacht club, he and I. We had about 4 extension cords, 50 feet long, and when we were done, I was coiling them up. He looked at me and he said, "You were never a sailor, were you?" I said, "No." "Why?" And he said, "That's not the way you coil." He said, "When you're on a boat, you got to be able to coil a rope," and he showed me how to do it, how you have to reverse it. And I always wanted to know more about his sailing adventures, because I guess he did it for a couple of years after they retired. And the only thing I ever got was a picture of his boat. I was really impressed with Harold's knowledge and his willingness to share it. I mean, he helped everybody. If they needed help, he'd be there. One thing that wasn't obvious when you first met Harold was that he had a great sense of humor, very dry.
So Harold, publicly, I want to thank you for 25 years. I'd love to hope that you would have another 25 years.
No. Don't wish that.
Don't wish that, okay.
Bottom line, Harold was a nice guy, he was a smart guy, and he was fun to work with. Harold had a big heart, and he was truly a good man, a gentleman. I enjoyed the years that I worked with him and getting to know him, and I will miss him a great deal.
Goodbye for now.